too, because if you're joining us on Facebook and you have to go, you can always go back to Facebook and look at it. If you're in the webinar with us, you can go to our YouTube page and you can see it there too. So a couple things on our end. Like I was saying, Liz and Lisa, thank you for doing. We love you guys. We've been doing this, God, close to a year now.
My God.
Oh my gosh, insane.
I know, but it's been so fun. I mean, we get to meet great authors
from
all over the world.
We're the OGs, you know?
What's OG?
The original gangsters.
Oh my gosh.
We were the first one to do events with you. And we really were, not to brag, but one of the first ones to do virtual events.
At all.
We were.
You were. It was your genius idea, I have to say, my friends.
Thank you.
Anyway, so for those of you that
I feel like I need some glasses to.
I know.
You don't even need them. You don't even need them. You just
my imaginary ones.
There you go. So just real quick about Warwick's, we are located for those of you that aren't familiar with us, we're located in La Jolla, San Diego, California. We are open for business. We would, if you're in the area, we would love to see you come in and discover Christina's books. We got Liz and Lisa's books. Buy that stack of books. It's the beginning of the year. We're in the retail slump at the beginning of the year. So any sales are great sales.
And no matter where you are in the country, you can send it media mail and it's really inexpensive and you get it quickly.
You do. I mean, media mail has actually been a lot better than we thought it was going to be. So I'll be putting, like Liz said, I'll be putting the books in the chat functions of both the webinar and the Facebook Live. So just easily click on those links. So with that, I'm going to go away for a while and you ladies have a great conversation.
Well, thanks, Julie. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Julie.
All right. Hey, everybody. As Julie said, I'm Liz Fenton. I'm here with Lisa Steinke. She is my best friend of over 30 years, and we are co-authors of 7 novels. The most recent came out this past July. It's called How to Save a Life, and it's a dark, heart-pounding love story with a Groundhog Day twist. And as Julie mentioned, it is available at Warwick's. They have signed copies there, as with all of our backlists. So you can order from wherever you are in the country. You can click on their website and order. It's super easy. But today we're here to talk to the beautiful Christina McDonald. And Lisa, why don't you tell us a little bit about her?
Okay. Christina McDonald is the USA Today bestselling author of Behind Every Lie and The Night Olivia Fell, which has been optioned for television by a major Hollywood studio. Her third book, Do No Harm, was published today. Congratulations. Originally from Seattle, Washington, she has an MA in journalism from the National University of Ireland, Galway, and now lives in London, England, where she is tonight. It's midnight there. So thanks for staying up late to talk to us about this.
What an honor to be here. Thank you.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. Booklist had this to say about Do No Harm. McDonald's third domestic thriller delivers a jaw-dropping plot. The suspense, along with the body count, ratchets up with their every encounter. McDonald offers a painful look at 2 hot-button topics: the desperate opioid crisis and a system that allows the cost of cancer pharmaceuticals to extend far beyond the reach of so many. Is what Emma does an unforgivable betrayal of her medical oath, her husband, and herself? It will be up to the reader to decide if the ends justify the means. And we also were so lucky to get an early copy, and we blurbed it as well. We loved it. We said, Do No Harm is a gripping and unflinching novel. Christina McDonald demands the answer to the ultimate question: how far would you go to save your child? One thing is for sure, your heart will be ripped out as you whip through each page to discover the answer. Highly recommend. So tell us what Do No Harm is about.
So Do No Harm is about a doctor. My doctor is called Dr. Emma Sweeney. And she finds out that her son, who's only 5 years old, has been diagnosed with a really rare form of leukemia. And since she's a doctor, the only kind of tool that she has at her disposal is prescription pads. So she reaches for that tool and she begins selling opioids to some very dodgy people. And when somebody ends up dead, her husband, who is the town's lead detective, is on the case, and he's trying to find out, why are people dying of opioids in his town? So it kind of begs the question, yes, how far would you go for somebody that you love? Is it okay to to do something like this, you know, amidst the opioid epidemic, amidst this national crisis that in fact is a very real thing in America. Is it okay to start selling drugs in order to fund your child's life-saving treatment? Do the ends justify the means? So it's definitely a moral quandary.
Absolutely. And I think that's what made it such a page turner. It's an intriguing, but also a timely concept. And I'm really curious how you came up with the idea.
So I wanted to write a story, well, a thriller more specifically, set against the backdrop of the opioid epidemic for a really long time, because my own brother, I've watched him struggle with addiction for most of my life. So it's a very personal topic. I have a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions about this. And I mean, I think probably most writers feel this way, but they quite a lot of the time will write from a place of deep emotion, and that's how I write from a place of deep emotion. When I'm feeling something really strongly, that's how I process. So I wanted to set a thriller against the backdrop of the opioid epidemic for a while, but I didn't know what the story would be until one day I read this news article about a podiatrist in Indiana, I think it was, and he had set up an opioid ring. And I read that, and the more I researched that, the more I found out that there were loads of different people, doctors, nurses, teenagers, you know, like there was a wrestlers club that set up an opioid ring. There's so many people that were selling opioids illegally just because they could get the money. And I started thinking about it, and why I really wondered, like, why do people do this when they clearly can see how badly the country is suffering from this crisis, this opioid crisis? What are their motivations? And that's a really key thing, you know, yourself as writers, that you have to really always look at your characters and what is their motivation for doing the things they do. So I was thinking about that, you know, was it power? Was it money? Was it status? And the only thing I could really come up with that made any sense to me was love. So I would do anything for my children because I love them so much. So then I started thinking of my character and how she would work and what she would do, and juxtaposing this whole idea of a corruption arc, you know, not necessarily a good mother. Well, she's a good mother, but not necessarily a good person. And juxtaposing that with how far you should go in order to save someone's life.
Right. Yeah. And I think you do it so well. And it kind of lends into my next question. And I was going to ask you about process, and you kind of started to get into it, basically saying you came up with, and I actually think it's very similar as you're talking. I'm like, oh man, this is how we plot our books. We usually come up with the concept and what's the narrative question first.
Yeah.
And then kind of backdoor it into characters. Now, it sounds like you do something similar. Is this something you did just for this book, or is this how you always do it?
Yeah, so I usually tend to have, I'm not a plotter in any way. I don't plot, but I do have a vague idea of kind of what I want the story to be about. This story happened to be a little bit more specific in my head, just because I think because I was so connected right away to the character, and I knew from the very outset that she was not going to be going on a good character arc. She was going on a corruption arc. So I knew who she was and the kind of character arc that she was going to be going on. And so that made it really easy for me to write. And also there's that emotional connection, which makes the words kind of flow a little bit easier. But as far as my writing process, it's actually really messy. I just kind of have a vague idea, and then I sit down at my laptop and I write. And as I write, I find out more about my characters and about the plot and about what I'm going to do for that day. And then I learn things, and I'm like, oh, but then I have to go back and redo this thing. So then I go back and then I fix it and then I go forward. So it's just so messy. It's just like, I like to think of it as an ice sculpture, like a chunk of ice, and I'm sculpting away at it. But I'm not a plotter. I'm not that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not that organized in any way. I just show up, and you know, I know my characters and I know their choices that they're going to make. And then that kind of follows through in the plot. And I try to make the plot also exciting, but also I really want my reader to connect with my protagonist and also all of the characters as well.
Absolutely. And you do. Absolutely. I know, Lisa, there's a question in the audience.
Yeah, there's two, but I think there's one that really ties into what you guys are talking about right now. It's from Vicky Watts, and she's wondering how long it takes you to write a book and if you have a daily schedule.
What a good question. So it usually takes me not that long to write a book. It takes me about 3 to 4 months to get a first draft done. But like I said, it's so messy that it then takes months and months after that to really craft it, to really get that character arc down, to really have like just make sure that the plot is spot on and that all of those beats I'm hitting at the right moment, the right time, you know, for the reader and where they would expect those beats to be. So then that process takes another, 6 months sometimes. I mean, it can take a while. And a lot of that happens as well once, I do my bit and I get it done to the best of my ability, but then it also goes to my agent, who is amazing at helping me see, just take another step back and look at it. And she'll then say, oh, maybe you need to do this or do that. And then from there, it goes to my editor, and then the editor will craft it. So there's so many rounds of edits along the way that actually the whole process from the time that I start writing until the time that the book comes out, it's such a, publishing is so slow. It can be 2 years, but the actual writing of the first draft is really only like 3 to 4 months. It's not that long. Right. What was the next part? The next part was, do I have
if you have a schedule? Yeah.
Well, usually I do, but in the pandemic, it's been a little different. So right now, I have 2 young kids, so they're at home and I have to homeschool them like every day. So it's been a bit tricky trying to find, it's really difficult to create when you have children around. I cannot do it. I don't know if it's just me.
That's but not just you.
You need a piece of silence and a piece of space to actually be creative and to create something. And that just doesn't happen when you're homeschooling kids. I can't teach math at the same time as trying to write a book. So I realized that was never going to happen while I was also teaching. So for this last year, the first few months of the pandemic, the first half of the pandemic, I was waking up at 5 a.m. to write. And I'm not a morning person. I'm terrible in the morning. And I would roll out of bed, just get a cup of tea in me, and just me and my tea and my laptop, no social media. I did not allow myself to even look at my phone or news.
Ooh, girl, you're good.
Yeah, so disciplined. And just me and my laptop. And I didn't even know what I was going to write. I had 2 words in my mind for a story. Like I did not have a concept. And I wrote a whole book, and we'll see what happens with that book. I mean, it is to be determined, but I did do it. And I think it showed me that I can write if I want to enough, which I do. I just have to carve out my own space, because I can't do that at the same time as homeschooling. So that's been my reality for the last year. Very early mornings.
Right. Absolutely.
Good I think for you.
We can all relate, right?
Yeah. I have another question from Christina Mott. She's wondering, she said you mentioned your brother, and she's asking, how did he feel about you writing about this subject?
I've been asked this question before. So before I did any publicity, I spoke to my brother about it, and he said, look, this is my reality. It is what it is. And if it can help somebody else, then that's fine. Talk about it as much as you want. But I did absolutely get his permission before doing any chats about this or bringing him up in any way, because, you got to be respectful. He does not feature in the book. The book is completely fictional, and it is just meant for entertainment. It's just that some of my ideas on theme and some of the statistics and some of the information that I've learned about the opioid epidemic, and some of that emotion that has come from watching somebody struggle and go through that war with themselves. A lot of that has gone into the book, but the story itself does not feature my brother. It's not real in any way.
Right.
Right. Christina has another question. She's wondering if you have any input on your book cover. She says she loves when Olivia fell. So haunting.
I have to interject here really quickly, because I don't know, give your Instagram handle really quick, because I want everyone to go look at this after, because this ties in. It's Christina Mac 79, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Do you want me to pull the picture up?
Yes. So this morning on Christina's Instagram, she posted herself. And so Lisa, will you hold up the book? You'll hold it up better because I've got the virtual background. It doesn't lend very well. So hold this up now. Christina, hold your, so Christina took this picture, that is her. And she asked everyone, do you think that on the cover is actually me? So
and almost
take it away.
everybody
I just wanted to preface that. Yeah, before you answer the question, I just wanted to preface that.
So almost everybody, I had hundreds of comments and almost everybody said, yes, it must be me, but it is in fact not me. I have no input on the cover really whatsoever. I mean, I can say, oh, could you try a different color scheme or color palette, or maybe the font could be different. I can say things like that. Or if I really hated it, then I think my publisher would probably say, let's change it. But you know, the cover is amazing and they do such a great job. It was just a very bizarre coincidence that the girl on the cover looks kind of like me when I tie my hair back and look over my shoulder.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So it was so funny to take that picture today.
Mm-hmm. Clever.
But no, it's not me in the cover.
It is really, the likeness is crazy.
And I didn't even have to like get dressed up or do anything different. I actually have, that's actually a wool black long jacket. That's actually my jacket that I wear. I was wearing black boots. I was wearing that was just my.
Do you run through fields like this when you wear your outfit?
Oh yeah, all the time.
looking over your shoulder
in the background, going, oh.
Lisa, you have another question, right? In the Q&A.
Yeah, Christina just followed up and said, LOL, that's why I asked. I thought for sure it was you. Thanks for answering my questions. Yeah. And then Alicia Lopez is wondering if you expect this to be turned into a movie, TV series.
I mean, an author always hopes, right? Isn't that all of our dreams, our hopes and dreams are to have our work on the big screen. So far there has been it has not been optioned. It's early days. So hopefully, fingers crossed, but we'll see, but not yet.
Yeah. Right. So, you know, we've written 3 suspense novels. We have 7 novels, so 3 of them are suspense. And, you know, we have a lot of respect for suspense writers because it's really tricky. What do you think are the most, like if someone's watching this and they want to write suspense, what do you think are the most important elements to keep in mind while writing?
I think every genre has its own particular beats that you need to hit. When I first sat down to write The Night Olivia Fell, I didn't intentionally try to write a mystery or a suspense novel in any way. I was just writing. And the more I edited, the more I kind of got the feel that it was actually more suspense. And that made sense to me because actually that's what I read. So it makes sense that that's what I would want to write. As far as what goes into it, I think really you need to have that feeling of almost kind of terror and anxiety for your characters. And in order for that to happen, you have to really care for them. You have to care about the story and you have to care about the character, and then you have to hit those beats. So, you know, there is an inciting incident at the beginning that kind of tells you what the book is going to be about, and it sets that up. And as an author, you have to follow through on that, but in such a way that you are constantly getting people more and more interested in ramping up the stakes all the time. And the way that I mean, it's always a learning process. You're learning as you go. But the way that I learned was I just read a lot of books. If you want to do something, you have to read about it, right? You need to read from other authors who are already doing that and doing a really great job at that. And I took classes. I took a few writing classes on genre in particular. I took a screenwriting class from the amazing John Truby, who gave really clear beats on each genre. And so I learned how to do that. And I just kind of started putting it all together, and writing The Night Olivia Fell was such a process, but throughout it, I did learn how to kind of put those beats together. And I think if you're writing and you want to write in the suspense genre, you need to figure out what those beats are, how to hit them. And the best way to do that is to read other suspense novels.
I totally agree. And I think it's so inspiring too, when you read something that's done really well, and you're like, oh, you know, it's so
I wish
great.
I'd done that.
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, there's so many.
yeah.
I wish we
Yeah.
had written.
Yeah.
So you're really supportive of other authors, and us included. You're a voracious reader. And I see that you were part of a debut authors group. I wrote readers group here, but it's authors group. Can you speak a little bit to like networking and how important that is to being an author?
I mean, it's huge, right? Like you need, as writers, we sit at home alone a lot of the time. And so it's really important that we get a bit of perspective, that we speak to other people who are doing the same thing as us, that we know where to go when we're feeling low, because there's a lot of rejection in this industry and you just got to go with it, and you got to then pick yourself back up. So you need people to be there for you to help you do that. So it's definitely really important in that way to have that support network. It's also really important just from having colleagues, I guess you could call all of us. We're all colleagues. We're working in different books, but we are all colleagues and we can all help each other out. So that's been amazing. You know, I just say to my debut authors group, guys, could you give me an extra tweet on this, I don't know, Goodreads giveaway I've got going on right now. And then, you know, you get more eyes on it that way. So it's great to have that support in terms of the job, but it's also great to have that support in terms of personal, just life, you know, because it can be quite a lonely job until you reach out to other people.
Yeah. And it's really a unique job that I think that people think they know what it is, but they don't really know what it is, or it's a very unique, and I'm sure you do this too, but like, I feel like I spend a lot of time explaining like, oh no, it's not really like that. It's like this, or, you know, it's not quite as glamorous as everyone.
Not as glamorous as you think.
Yeah.
And just because you've done a really great job on one book does not mean the next book is going to sell very well. Like every book is different, and you still have to work hard every single book. So just because you've made it one day does not mean the next day you've made it. You could be nothing then. So you just have to constantly be working. And that's why it's so important to have your peeps.
No, I agree. I mean, I think it's really, and I think a lot of industries, but particularly with publishing, that your success is not guaranteed by your past history. I mean, it's not at all. I mean, you can go 0 to 0 pretty quick.
Yeah.
Publishing industry.
And then back again. Yeah.
And then back to a hero. Yeah. And then everyone's like, oh my God, where have they been? You're like, oh, I wrote like 9 other books. Lisa, what were you saying about Kristen Hanna? Like people were like, oh, she's so huge, but how many books did she write before she really broke out?
She because I was watching Warwick's had an event with her and Harlan Coben. So I tuned in for that, and it was really not until The Nightingale, and I don't know how many books were before that, but I would say probably at least 15. I mean, she's been writing for 25 years.
Yeah.
So it was really,
It was like 20.
Yeah, pop in.
It was like 20, like 22, I think. She wrote a book when her son was little.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fascinating to sort of watch that because, we've been fans for, forever, and just to hear her talk like that it was really, that was her breakout book, like 20 something books in.
Right. Because she did like the Firefly Lane had a little bit, and there was some that like blipped, but nothing hit like that one did. Okay.
Leah Moriarty is another one like that. And we actually met her in person before The Husband's Secret. And we had been reading her, but I remember talking to her and she's like, I think it was the Hypnotist Love Story. She's like, it sold like 5 copies. It was like before she was, and we were, and then The Husband's Secret was next and she blew up, but she probably had 6 or 7 books before that. So anyway, it's very interesting. And on that note too, and I mentioned that you're a voracious reader and you're so generous with other authors. Can you tell us 3 books you've read recently that resonated with you?
I think 3 books I've read recently. So there's a nonfiction book that I read over Christmas. It's called, it's right here actually. I love this book. It's called Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by
Oh, that's so good.
Lisa
I
loves that.
love that
so
book.
good. And I don't read a lot of nonfiction, but there's something about that book
So
where
good.
it has the characters and then the characters develop, right? So it was so interesting to see how she developed those characters as a nonfiction writer as opposed to a fiction writer. And if you haven't heard of this book or anything, you should definitely pick it up. It is so heartwarming. It's basically these stories about a therapist when she goes into therapy, but then she's also giving therapy to these other characters, these other people whose names have been changed. But it's just so amazing. And I connected with it and felt it on every level. It was such an amazing book. What's another book that I read recently? So I'm currently reading and loving Harlan Coben's new one. I'm reading an early copy of it. It's called Win.
He's great.
W-I-N. He's such a pro. And again, this is one of these things where like I read all of his books because he's such a pro and he hits all those beats and I want to learn from him. I'm just hungry to learn from him because he writes so well. It doesn't matter what he writes, he just writes so well. So I'm loving that book. And then prior to that, I read a thriller. It was my first thriller by Robin Harding. It's again an advanced reader copy, and it's called The Perfect Family. And it is, The Perfect Family. And it is so good. And again, I was like, I wish I'd written this. It's my first book from her. And it's basically about this family who they all have their secrets and their house starts getting attacked. Like first it's just they're being egged, and then it's fruit, and then a fire is set outside, and it just gets increasingly more suspenseful, and you're more and more terrified for this family. But then slowly and gradually we find out what these secrets are that these family members are hiding, and it's so deeply suspenseful and just like really darkly sublime. I love it. I think everybody should definitely read it.
That's awesome. Yeah, she's really nice.
She's
that sounds so good. I have two questions from Megan on Facebook. She's wondering, I guess I'll give them both to you and you can answer them however in whatever order you want. She wants to know who some of your favorite authors are, and she also wants to know if it was difficult to get your first book published.
So some of my favorite authors are obviously you guys. How to Save a Life was one of those books that really grabbed me emotionally, and that's so important to me as an author. I really need to connect with the protagonist in the book. So that emotion that came through, I just loved it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Lisa Unger, again, she's such a pro.
Yeah.
Mary Kubica, Wendy Walker, Kimberly Bell. I mean, I could just go on and on. I just want to keep on talking about all of the amazing. And now one of my new favorites is Robin Harding. David Bell, he's so great as well. So mostly I stick within obviously the suspense and thriller kind of category. So those are where my favorite authors are. What was the other question?
It's was it hard to get your first book published?
Oh, it was. Yes. I mean, I think every author has a story of trauma behind the book, right?
Yes.
So I wrote my very, very first book many, many years ago. And I took it out and I got an agent. I submitted to over 90 agents. And I did eventually get an agent who signed with me. And she loved the book and we did a few edits, and then she sent it out and it failed at that level once it got to publishers. No publisher bought it. So that's the thing about getting an agent, is like the agent then has to sell it. So if they can't sell it, then you're set back and you have to start over. That book goes into a drawer somewhere. So that was devastating to kind of get that book. You know, I'd worked on it for years, and you know, applying to agents, submitting to agents is obviously, it sounds so easy, but it takes, you know, years sometimes. So that was a bit devastating. So I sat down and I wrote another book because the agent I was working with at the time, she said, let's write a book together. And so I was like, oh, okay. But that didn't work. And she didn't love the book and she couldn't sell that book. So we ended up going our separate ways. And this is like years down the road. So there were a few rejections along the way. And then I sat down and I wrote a third book. And the third book was The Night Olivia Fell. And I pitched it to my top 5 agents and got, requests from all of them. And I signed with the agent that I chose. And then it went out to publishers and I had offers from 2 different publishers. So it would just happen to be the book where I kind of put it all together. But I think that those things had to happen for me to really realize how much I wanted to publish a book. Because a lot of times when you get rejected or turned down, it's very easy to say, oh, well, I guess it's not for me then. But actually getting those rejections, it made me go, actually, it shows me how much I want to be published and to make this my career, not just for one book, but for every single book, and to kind of build on each of those. So yeah, there were many rejections along the way. It didn't just spontaneously happen. There's been years and years of work. And a lot of, sad things have happened along the way, but a lot of great things have happened too. And I've met so many great people in this industry that have just blown me away with their kindness. And yeah, and I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone, that's a very interesting origin story. I'm sure a lot of people, traumatizing is a good word.
Yeah, it's never as glamorous as it looks from the outside, that's for sure. Alicia Lopez is asking if you have any, you kind of touched on this earlier, I'm not sure if it's the book though. Do you have anything else in the works that you can talk about?
I do. I can't talk about it too much. I am currently working on another book. Because it hasn't gotten to the level where it has sold yet. It's still in the early stages of things. I'm not actually allowed to talk about it. It's just too early, but I am working on another book. This is the book that I was working on at the start of the pandemic. It was so funny to write because I did not have a concept. I think a lot of people felt this way at the very beginning, just like my head was so full. I couldn't focus. I was just like, right. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm writing. But I showed up and I wrote, and I only had 2 words in mind. I had kidneys and sister, and that was it. And I wrote a story from 2 words, just completely, just pure creativity. So we'll see what happens with it. I do have a story that I'm working on, and hopefully it will sell and everybody will see it in bookshops in a year or 2.
We'll be crossing our fingers for you. Yeah, we know what that's like. Yeah. Okay, so I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. And we mentioned how to find you on Instagram. Where else can people find you?
So on Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Christina Mac79. On Facebook, I'm at Christina McDonald Author. And then you can always look me up on my website, which is christina-mcdonald.com.
Okay. And you can find us Instagram at Lisa and Liz on Instagram, Liz and Lisa on Twitter, or lizandlisa.com, or Liz Fenton and Lisa Steinke on Facebook. Oh, there she is.
Hi, Julie.
Love these conversations because it's like just seeing the back end of like how it happens. And I love that our viewers are like curious about like the agent process and being published, because I think there's so much that there seems to be a mystery about it, and like unmasking the mystery, I think really helps a lot of people. It really does. That it doesn't just seem like it's like, oh, it's so easy to write a book and get published, you know.
Right.
I definitely didn't know before I got into this industry.
Yeah. And I mean, and here's the thing too, I think that it was really interesting. There's not one right way or one right story, you know what I mean? And how to do it. It's just like almost every author has a different story on how they got there.
Absolutely.
So it's hard to like tell somebody a very definitive, like, oh, go do this, you know?
Yeah.
It's a tough one. But we're so excited. Do No Harm. I love it. It's like, it's one of those great page turners. And Sarah over on Facebook was saying, sounds like the book sounds really interesting. So you got some really good comments coming in from Facebook too. So
thank you.
I love doing the webinar and the Facebook is kind of fun having both things out there for everybody.
Yeah.
So, and I think that there was one other little comment that Christina made, that she loves these virtual events and so hopes that we continue doing them. So Liz and Lisa, We've got some fans. I got to keep doing these.
We're here for it.
We're here for it. So
Yeah.
thanks everybody for joining in.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christina. It was such a pleasure
Thank
to
you.
chat with you,
Thank
staying up late with
you.
us. I know it's
Such an
super
honor.
late over
Thank
there.
you. Oh, that's all right. It's such an honor. Thank you guys so
Excellent.
much. And thank you, Julie.
Yep. Happy Pub Day. Thank you for joining us
you.
on Pub Day. We appreciate it very much. So
Ah, thank you.
bye
Bye.
everybody.
All right. Bye,
Bye.
everybody. Take care.